The molecules floating between droplets carried through the air that we breathe, produced from trees, transfers love energy. From the rays of the sun, that's 6 CO2 molecules from which we breathe, the air we share and exchange, how easily he took his breath away. We see George Floyd begging for his life while a white officer takes it. How did that same love energy shared from trees get lost in the exchange if we're all breathing the same air? How are we supposed to breathe if there's no air? Remember George Steiny, a 14-year-old black boy sentenced to death in 1944. It took 10 minutes to convict him and 70 years to exonerate him. 6 molecules, 6 degrees of separation between the truth and who's telling the story, hearing so many lies that you begin to believe the lies to be true, like calling 911 and making false reports on black men. Tell me the names of all the officers who killed black people unjustly. I want to know the names of every slave master and every indignant person who used fear and capital oppression, who set this in motion and not being held accountable. From the first ships that landed in Virginia in 1607 to the ships that survived the great hurricane of 1635 that shipwrecked and settled in Boston, where our ancestors walked the streets along the Freedom Trail, to the first slave ships carrying Aristotelian rationalizations of slavery and human hierarchy, an effort to justify dehumanizing Africans that preceded colonial America, as if black inferiority was stamped from the beginning, and justifying enslaving Africans like Senator Jefferson Davis said in a speech to Congress in 1860. Like in 1453, a publication of racist ideas, Chronicle of the Discovery and Conquest of Guinea, based on Prince Henry's racist policies on slave trading. Back to the root of the word slave as Slavs, a word rooted in Western European language, where Europeans saw slaves not as white, but black. Some people like to say, let's protest because it's enough. Enough of waiting for change. Like Martin Luther King said, why we can't wait, from his book and his letter from Birmingham jail. He said, we have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional rights and God-given rights. Perhaps it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. Enough of waiting for equitable opportunities where my skin color is not weaponized and my hair is not suspended from going to school, or discriminated from job opportunities, or because my name is too ethnic, or because my skin color alarms you, or because of one bad experience you treat me as inferior, like I'm the exception. Oh, it's not you. You're okay. It's just you people. You're offending me with your microaggressive demeanor and words and actions, pulling the trigger like it's okay to say the N-word around me because you think I'm cool, because I'm your one black friend. Was it enough when Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was assassinated? Was it enough when Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were gunned down by 14 police officers while at home sleeping, targeted by the FBI, 100 bullets fired, false police reports, and 14 years later, a lawsuit is settled and no murder conviction for these officers? More than 50 years later, we're still marching for police brutality to stop and attain equitable rights. Who's policing the police? Where's my Black Panthers at? Was it enough when Africans were stolen, beaten, whipped, chained, lynched, murdered, limbs, families, and being literally ripped apart, when some chose death over enslavement? When sharks still swim the same bloody water trail like hurricanes flowing the same transatlantic slave trade originating from West Africa? Knowing that vaccinations were created during slavery solely for the capital preservation, not because Black Lives Matter. Was it enough when Thomas Jefferson owned the most slaves in the 1700s, or when Lincoln abolished slavery for capital gain and supported the Union? Not because Black Lives Matter, because we all know he owned slaves. Was the Emancipation Proclamation enough when it did not free all black enslaved Africans only in the Confederate States of America in 1863, like the Republican Party being created in opposition of the Kansas-Nebraska Act that was closed to slavery? Before red and blue states, there were free and slave states. Was it enough that there were 17 free states in 1848 before the Civil War? Was it enough that the 54th Massachusetts Infantry that led the assault on Fort Wagner, that was won by our black men on the front lines? Was it enough that black soldiers fought in 449 Civil War battles, fighting for equality, from enslavement to the front lines in the military to the Civil War? Was it enough that we would forever be free, like Lincoln said? Was it enough that slavery was first abolished in Massachusetts in 1783? Was it enough when all enslaved Africans were finally free? Was the 13th and 15th Amendment enough for freedom and voting rights? Was it enough when blackface minstrels hit mainstream in 1835, like Stephen Fetchit in 1934, or how Birth of a Nation reignited the KKK in 1915 and killed 4 little black girls in 1963? Or the only roles for black actresses were mammies? So you tell me, what is enough? How do we get to breathe in that initial love energy exchange if we're all breathing the same air when we're born? How do you sustain 6 molecules carrying life shared from trees if we're all connected where life originated in Africa? So I'm going to keep saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. This revolution is on the big screen. It's being televised, recorded on camera phones, posted on social media platforms. It's being televised, y'all. So don't change the channel.